Russia affirms its solid attitude towards Syria. Lavrov reaffirms Russia's rejection of the use of force in Syria. The terrorists of Al-Nusra Front linked to Al-Qaeda admit their responsibility for the terrorist explosions in Damascus. Good afternoon. Welcome to our news bulletin. I'm Dania Nizam. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Russia would not change its stance of rejecting military intervention in Syria because of the grave consequences it would have on the entire region. In a press conference in Moscow, Lavrov reiterated Russia's position that it would not allow passing any Security Council resolution that authorizes the use of force against Syria. The Russian foreign minister said that Russia has called for holding an international conference on the peaceful settlements in Syria with the participation of important regional parties such as Iran, Iraq, and other countries. Lavrov reiterated that Russia does not want to change its stance towards Syria but wants the implementation of Annan's six-point plan, noting that the international conference Moscow has called for is meant to support the implementation of this plan. He voiced concern that foreign sides are recruiting mercenaries and extremist forces and supplying them with money and arms to perpetrate crimes in Syria and ignite sedition. He stressed that there is no alternative to the plan of the UN envoy Kofi Annan to achieve a peaceful settlement in Syria, pointing out that there are parties that are striving to abort the plan and implement their own agendas, and that putting a time limit for Annan's plan aimed at pressuring the Security Council. He stressed that Syria has implemented many of Annan's plan items and is serious about making the plan a success, but there are parties that are supporting terrorism and working hard to sabotage the international envoy plan. He called on these foreign parties not to impose any agendas on the Syrian government. Lavrov said that the crimes which were committed in Al-Hula and Al-Qaeda and other areas and the terrorist bombings which took place in Aleppo and Damascus came in an escalation that has been provided cover by external sides. Lavrov criticized the Arab League's decision on stopping the broadcast of the Syrian satellite channel, saying it contradicts the freedom of expression and media. The Syrian Arab TV telecast a documentary film shedding light on the terrorist explosions in Damascus and the criminals who detonated them. These explosions were planned and implemented by terrorists related to Al-Qaeda from various nationalities. The explosion in Al-Qazzaz was carried out by terrorists in two booby-trapped cars to the southeast of Damascus on May 8th. They finished preparing the booby-trapped cars on Thursday and drove them at 6 o'clock in the morning. Another black vehicle was driven by an Iraqi terrorist named Marwan. The first car carried 700 kilograms of explosives, driven by the Jordanian suicide terrorist Abu Musab. The second car carried 5,000 kilograms and was driven by the Palestinian terrorist Muhammad Ali Ghazi Abu Hammam. The cars were taken to the second bridge along the airport highway. Abu Hammam was helped by his mother Aziza, who lives in Al Yarmouk refugee camp. The Jordanian Abu Musab drove the second car. The third car was driven by the terrorist Muayyad Ali Ghazi. As for the Iraqi terrorist Marwan, he was an experienced criminal. He supervised all the vehicles that exploded in Damascus. Another Syrian terrorist from Syria was named Muhammad Ahmed Kamal ad-Din. Another Syrian criminal was named Yasser. He took part in preparing and detonating all the cars in various governorates. Yet another Iraqi terrorist was named Alawi and called Abu Ayman.
محمد أمين علي عبد الله من البصيرة.
I'm from Al-Bsira in Deir ez-Zor. I studied in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Damascus. I was recruited by a person called Yusuf al-Hajr, leading a member of the Nusra Front, which belongs to Al-Qaeda. I suffered from psychological problems that hindered my studies. A doctor advised me to read the Quran. Al-Hajar visited me frequently and told me about the jihadi operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. He also gave me books by some sheikhs from Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. He urged me to take part in the armed actions, and he told me that there are Iraqi volunteers that have come to help us. He introduced me to one of them named Faisal, who was the military official. He asked me to rent a car. Then he brought other Iraqis to stay in the house. They talked about Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, and Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. One day he asked me to go to a farm where 2 cars were being booby-trapped. He loaded them with stacks that contained fertilizers and large cylinders. A truck was brought in by the suicide bomber Abu Humam and another one, the Jordanian terrorist. Each cylinder contained about 200 kilograms of explosives. The terrorists stole another car with a large box at the rear. After preparing the cars, the terrorists drove them out. 15 minutes later, we heard strong explosions, followed by another strong explosion.
As for the terrorist explosion in Al-Qaeda, the film showed that the criminal who carried out that act was Omar Abbas al-Masri. He was a Syrian from Idlib living in Yarmouk refugee camp, where he was also known as Abu Hajar al-Shami. He bought a car from Barzeh and booby-trapped it in Yalda. He worked with other terrorists to booby-trap 4 cars that targeted the customs office in Kafarsus al-Qassa and the building of the criminal security department.
A young man came to buy the car. I asked him about his name. He said he is Omar al-Masri and that he is from the Dana area in Idlib. I asked al-Masri about the purpose of buying the car. He answered that he wanted to sell diesel fuel. I asked about the tank that he will use to load on the car. He said that he already has one. The buyer failed to complete the sale transaction. On Saturday that followed, the security men came and we knew what happened.
Hana Ali Shami, mother of the suicide terrorist Omar al-Masri, said that her son used to work with his father in Lebanon and to come back to Syria every now and then. She said her son showed religious inclinations. She said she forgave him, but the people did not, because his hands were full of the blood of innocent victims.
My son was with me in Lebanon. He was imprisoned in the Rumiyah jail. We went back to Syria, where I discovered that his ideas changed completely. He refused to greet his cousins. He used to say that such and such a person deserved to die. I tried to bring him back to the right way, but I couldn't.
For her part, Safa Abbas al-Masri, sister of the suicide bomber Omar al-Masri, denounced her brother's terrorist act. She said that if he was the one who perpetrated this crime, she would never forgive him. She added, "He's not my brother, he is a criminal."
من فترة شي 7 سنين تقريبا كان إنسان عاطل عن العمل.
7 years ago, my nephew was out of work and used to take drug pills. He was imprisoned in the Rumiyah jail in Lebanon. I contacted him by email and I noticed that he considered us unbelievers. He became a religious fanatic and considered his father, his sister, and his uncle as unbelievers.
علاقتي بعمر المصري.
Omar was my friend. He was in Lebanon. And after he came back to Syria, he told me that he was not sleeping at his home. And he asked me not to tell anyone about this. So I asked him, "Where are you staying then?" He said that he is sleeping at some friends' places. And he told me that he joined one of the groups and that they are gathering people. He said that the leader is of the Jordani family. Later, he informed me that he is planning on detonating himself.
The terrorist Majdi Hassan Amoura supervised preparing the suicide bomber Omar Abbas al-Masri, and he also supervised the operation. He planned it, prepared it, and detonated the cars in Idlib. He is a 36-year-old Palestinian Syrian, and he is staying at the Yarmouk camp.
بعد أحداث فرع المنطقة.
After the explosion at the security center office in the area, Majdi seemed tense. He told me that he was going to work in Aleppo with one of his friends. 10 days later, he telephoned us from Idlib. We rejected his actions. We were shocked by this destructive ideas that came from the Wahhabi thoughts. When he visited Majdi in jail, he told us that he swore an oath to follow his Iraqi commander. I asked him how and why he followed his commander without knowing him. Such a commander may be a foreign or an Israeli agent. I wondered how he obeyed such a commander and killed people with explosives.
On the terrorist explosion in El Midan, which took place at noon on the 27th of April, killing many people and leaving dozens injured. The documentary film showed that the one who carried out the attack by detonating a 30-kilogram explosive was the suicide bomber terrorist Abdessalam Awad Al-Ali Al-Hayawi. His mother is Turfa Al-Ali. He was known as Abi Omar Al-Shami from the governorate of Deir ez-Zor. He is 23 years old and he's known for his religious extremism, as his brothers and relatives testified.
كان معروف بتزمته بآرائه وأفكاره الدينية، خاصة أفكاره الدينية.
My brother was a Salafi fanatic. When I was in the hospital for a surgical operation, he visited me and he told me that he was going to carry out a suicide explosion with another terrorist. I was shocked and I tried to persuade him not to do this act, but he refused to listen to me. In his last call, he told me that he was working with a Nusra Front whose members are spread throughout Syria.
The documentary film revealed that providing and making explosive devices, as well as preparing booby-trapped cars to detonate them in Damascus, used to take place in a metal workshop in the area of Aqraba. The workshop is owned by the terrorist Saeed Mahmoud Hamadi, son of Sumayya. He is known as Abu Salah. He is a Syrian and he is a member of Jabhat al-Nusra group. He employed an Iraqi explosive expert called Taha in his workshop. Bara Mustafa Nattouf, who calls himself the Emir of Mu'admayat al-Sham, which belongs to Al-Qaeda, said that he met some persons who had come from Iraq and intended to carry out operations under the pretext of supporting the Syrian people. One of them called himself Abu Mus'ab. He said that he was responsible for armed action in Syria. The terrorist Nattouf added that another terrorist called Abu Muhammad al-Julani gave himself the title of Wali in Syria. He spoke about smuggling weapons from Iraq into Syria, and he talked about recruiting others. He was the one who carried out the explosion in Al-Midan. This brings our bulletin to a close. For more news, log on to our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now over to our economic news with